Thank you. Lisa, when you're ready.
Okay.
Excuse me. It is 6:04 p.m. on Tuesday, June 11th, 2024, and I would like to call to order the regular city council meeting for the city of Millwood. Ms. Castle, roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Stravens,
Present.
Councilmember Sander,
Here.
Councilmember Van Hees,
Here.
Councilmember Culler,
Here.
Councilmember BC, Mayor Freeman.
Present. So note for the record that all 5 council members are in attendance, and we have a quorum for conducting business this evening. This time, Mr. Sander, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. At this time, I would like to request the council to add one item to tonight's consent agenda. Placed before you is task order number 2403. This is from Welchcomer Engineers for a Argonne Road public outreach component. This is the provides for funds to oversee and manage Recraft Creative to provide. This would generate a project video website, facilitate 2 public meetings with advertisements and public contact for the meetings, all meeting materials, a summary of the comments that were received from the public at the 2 meetings, a presentation to the council on the public involvement process, and all production and rendered drawings for the project itself. Can I have a motion to include this? Is there a motion to include this as part of tonight's consent agenda?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to include, wait, did you reference 24?
It's 2403, task order 2403.
Okay, I'll make a motion to include task 2403 in tonight's agenda. Second.
Consent agenda.
Consent agenda.
Thank you. Was there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
So tonight's consent agenda is amended, and so at this time, I would look for a motion from the council. Is there anyone who would like to make any other amendments for the tonight's agenda as presented? Seeing or hearing none, do I have a motion to approve tonight's amended agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's amended agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the amended agenda is approved unanimously tonight. Thank you. And that brings us to our local agency reports and presentations. We have no one here from Spokane Valley Fire District, and we do not have any law enforcement officers tonight. We have no others, so we have no local agency reports or presentations tonight. We have no other presentations. We had our special workshop previous to this. So that brings us to item number 6, which is public comments concerning action items tonight. Have we received any public comments on action items, either via email, via written, or delivered to the city of Millwood for tonight's action items? And those are action items for consideration and motion. So those would be the action items under 9 of the consent agenda, or of the agenda. So no comments. Do we need an executive session tonight, Mr. Wurst? We do not need an executive session tonight. So this brings us to item number 8, our action items for first presentation. Our first action item for first presentation is the Spokane County Wastewater Treatment Services Interlocal Agreement. You would remember that Mr. Tuig from Spokane County Environmental Services came out last month and presented the new interlocal agreement for wastewater services. treatment services, I will say. We do run our own city sewer. So, what I'm trying to do is get this in front of council at this meeting to see if, like you to begin review. What I can say is it is as Mr. Tuig, presented, regarding fees, schedule, all that. We did have two questions. One is that, or I reached out to Mr. Tuig on two items. The first is that the original period of this interlocal agreement was 4 years. Mr. County is willing to agree to a 15-year term on this agreement. The other is that our city engineer, Nisha Manini over at Welch Comer, suggested that we should get some clarification on how our our maximum output to the how often it's calculated, all that stuff. And basically it is our discharge is calculated once a year. So they're not running a monthly calculation. They use the previous year to calculate the next year, and they do it once a year. And I will get a better. We just got these comments back, or we just received these comments back from county. Those will be incorporated into the contract, and we'll have a better understand, or not a better understanding, but we'll have a complete contract. What I do want to do is, because this is the first reading, get this in front of everybody. This is the interlocal agreement. Have everybody on council start reviewing this. And if you have questions, please feed questions to myself or to Mr. Shiwi or Mr. Erdahl, Mr. Erdahl, or back to the city, and we can get those to Spokane County and discuss with that. Yes?
Are we going to ask questions tonight?
Sure.
So what is the benefit of going from 4 years to 15 years?
The biggest benefit is I think you don't want to be in a position where you're constantly renegotiating this. We've tried to keep this contract as consistent with your historical contract, which is really good, but it's also not really consistent with how the city's outflow to the county system is right now. There's a disconnect. I don't think you wanna be in a position where you could be subject to a significant reevaluation, renegotiation in a short-term period. I mean, if we wanted to go back and say, could we, lock it in for a 5-year period with 2 5-year extensions at the option of the city, maybe we could do that. But I think one of the things that we've tried to do is just maintain some continuity on this contract without, we've kicked this can down the road for about a
Apparently
decade.
20 years.
Yeah, so, so I think that was kind of the goal, was just to try to get it extended out so we're not sitting there constantly renegotiating this contract.
I understand, but the rate would still escalate year over year based off of their, we're not agreeing on rates. They can just do whatever rate increase they want in a year or 2 years, and we've kind of locked ourselves into a 15-year of why don't you tell us what we pay? And
That won't change under a term. That part I can be certain with the county. I'm just worried about additional provisions the county might want.
fair.
What came forward 15 years ago? Yeah, 16 years ago, was substantially more onerous on the city than what this document looks like.
Well, what struck me, and it may not be able to be mitigated, as you point out, we've kicked the can down the road for 20 years. We've already had a cost savings of effectively $2.9 million. But one of the selling points is we understand that you manage your own money, and so we're gonna give you this rate that's based off of acknowledgement and honor, but we haven't codified that at all. Because then he goes on to say, and we can do whatever we want after this year, including if we want to build some stuff and tell you that your stuff isn't, we're just going to retroactively charge you for that. And there may not be a way to mitigate it, but I just want to make sure I'm understanding for sure what I'm voting on.
I think you're right. I think the historical agreement that the city had did not allow the county to capture the increased cost, the increased infrastructure, the increased improvements that went into the system. It was a good agreement. I don't see the county going backwards on that one, unfortunately, on the rates. Part of the concern as well is, when you have an interlocal agreement such as this, how do I say this gently? The politics and the policies can change with the other party to the contract as well. So there's some benefit to just maintaining some of the continuity that we have in the terms. But, I mean, if you'd like us to go back and just kind of reevaluate, can we, I don't know what your option's gonna be at 5 years, other than, you know, we can go back to try to renegotiate as well. What we're trying to do is kind of close that door on the county to come back and make it a little bit more onerous. But we can go back and reevaluate. They didn't balk at the extension of the timing, so if the council's mindful of maybe a shorter period while we evaluate, we could certainly, I don't think the county's gonna be concerning of that at all. I think what they're trying to do is just get us on the same page as every other
Everybody else.
jurisdiction.
Yeah.
No, please.
Well, I don't know that I have an action. It's more, I appreciate this two-touch method because it allows me to really make sure I'm understanding the ramifications of what we're voting for.
I would just say that where we are the recipient of services, it is better to have a longer agreement where than we are the provider of services. And we're not going anywhere else with our wastewater. So if we like this contract as written, or we accept it as written, it's better to lock it in for a longer time period than, as Mr. Worst was saying, should there be an idea that suddenly wastewater services need to be expanded and they need to have some sort of additional process or procedure built in the contract, we're at least good for 15 years. We're not the same way that folks in the valley are, where they get their services directly from Spokane County. Mr. Stearns.
So I like the 15 years, but didn't I read here that it's a 3% increase, annual increase? So I would hope that we could, if we do a 15-year, that we could decrease that 3% annual increase. That would make sense to me. Mr. Worst?
Would make sense to the city, it will not make sense to the county at all. That part I can assure you. This document is driven by the rate increases that are projected for the county over their system improvement plan.
So-
We can certainly ask, I'm not discounting it, we can certainly go back, I would not want the council to be hopeful that we'll get that element reduced, and we will go back and ask.
Okay. Would you think then, from a negotiation standpoint, would it be wiser to do a 5-year with then 2 5-year options? You know, 3% over 15 years, right, that's substantial. Do you foresee in the future that we could, maybe in 5 years do a 2.5? Does it give us more negotiation power in the future? Does that make sense, Brian?
I don't think you have negotiation power because you don't have anywhere to send it. That's gonna be the biggest problem.
Right.
It could be that in 5 years, the county comes back and says, we put everybody else at 4%. I think it's gonna warrant, it's just gonna require some additional discussions. I will say historically, the reason that there's been some reluctance on the city's part is how the county presented it to the city was take it or leave it. And we said, well, we got an agreement, we like it. I think at this point, Mr. Tuig and the mayor have had a pretty good discussion along the line, so I'd say let's capitalize on those discussions and let's see what we can do in terms of get an extension and maybe lock in the monetary if we can.
I would also say that previously, there's been a few things. One is this whole idea as Councilmember BC alluded to, we've got, 2.9 million of free service as far as they're concerned. They have in the past approached the city about covering that nut. They are no longer coming to us asking us to make up what they perceive is us not being a fair partner in their wastewater treatment plant. They are accepting the fact that they have been poor interlocal partners, if you would, in the sense of negotiation. What I can say is, based on the discussions I've had with Mr. Tewig, this is this is the carrot. The carrot is, we're gonna give you 5 years to ramp up. They're not hitting us all between the eyes with the fee initially. There's a 5-year ramp up period, which they could say at that point, we're still losing that money in there. They've accepted that. They are no longer coming back to us asking for, what's up, how you gonna make us right on everything you haven't paid for the last 20, 30 years. They're no longer asking for that. But I do not believe that they are going to, they are not gonna disappear like they've done on the previous two public facilities directors over there.
And Mr. Mayor, so in terms of my understanding, we have a current contract, correct?
Sure,
And it doesn't have a termination,
It-
correct?
it does not.
So we have some negotiation, and so I would think so.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
What I would say is,
The basis of that contract largely doesn't exist at this point.
Alright, so I guess, so here's where I'm going with this is, and so that 3% annual increase, it could be 5%. I would like to negotiate, from a standpoint of 2.5, right, over a 15-year period.
stuff.
They give us a 3-year contract, we'll give you 15 years, it's guaranteed 2.5. In my world, right, that's how you negotiate. Hey, you want 3 years? We'll give you 15, but we'll give you a 2.5. My second question though, I actually have 3 questions, is the second question would be, is that in addition to what residents pay? So we're paying how much, 35? My wife pays the bills, so how much is the
We
rate right
pay
now?
$13.55 a month in county treatment.
Okay,
That is about $30 less per month than everybody else.
okay. And will it be in addition to that, or is that kind of encompassing? Does that make sense? I
Yeah.
meant to ask that at the last meeting. Is it encompassing, or is
That
it
I
just
don't
on top? Does that make sense?
So in this contract, there is a spreadsheet at the end of the contract that basically provides a breakdown of what it would look like and then what it will look like going forward. So currently, our the county, what we pay for ERU is 18? No, yeah, 18, like you said.
$13.55 is what we currently pay under the old contract.
But we pay, but we just pay them a lump
That's
sum.
per, yes, that is what the end user is paying.
Right.
Yeah.
So they are going to escalate from over 24, 25, 26, 27, and 28 to reach the same rates that everyone else in their service area would pay. We will pay the same rate that any other single ERU homeowners will pay, the same rate that any other single ERU payer would pay in city of Spokane, except for the fact that our bills would still be higher because we own and operate and maintain our own pipes and plumbing. So we have a small margin of excess charge that is different than what a county resident, but we'll just say City of the Valley resident would pay, because we own our pipes and plumbing. The option, if council is, the only option I can see that if you wanted apples to apples is selling our sewer service to the county. which would basically be, it would not be a sale, it would be a transfer. Transferring the ownership and the operation of our sewage to the county. And then that would be, at that point, the county would own and operate all pipes, lift stations, everything in the valley up to Liberty Lake Sewer District. Because they still have because even in Liberty Lake, they're having the same issue because, or they're not having the issue we have because they never had an independent contract, but they still have residents on one side of the aisle that pay the county fees, and then on the other side that are in the Liberty Lake Sewer District that pay a different set of fees for sewage treatment, because they own and operate their own plant.
Yeah, so I'm not proposing that. So what it looks like here is currently we pay $30.78 on average, we'll pay $35.49. So my first point is I think that we have an existing contract, maybe it's not going to work out. Let's try to get that 3% down to like 2.5%, right? Let's try to negotiate.
So just to be clear, you'll pay $35.49 in July, then on the next page, it'll go up another 3% and you'll pay $40.91. In 2026, you'll pay $46.48. In 2027, $52.20. And in 2028, it's $55.94, which is slightly higher than what a monthly charge for the county would be. That $2 and some odd cent is the difference between the county, a citizen in the valley the city of the valley not owning and operating their own pipes is what is extra for us to own and operate our own collection system.
And then finally, my last question is, and you brought this up, good job. What do we currently use? We're not to exceed 400,000 gallons. Do we know, Matt, what we're using?
I can have that number direct, but I know Nisha said we are not close to that number at all.
Are we 200? Okay.
So I will ask on that.
Yeah.
Sure.
So my interest isn't to hardball this, and like use some false leverage. But what I did hear from the presentation was, one, an acknowledgement, we're not going to recapture money that's gone in the past. And number two, we do acknowledge that you own some of your own infrastructure. So my focus or standpoint or any questions I have is geared towards, can we ensure that's codified? That there's a proportionality. I get that we can't crystal ball, it's gonna be 2.5 or it's gonna be 5. We don't know what it's gonna cost 15 years from now, but I do not wanna be paying more than every other jurisdiction because another administrator has decided justice needs to be, exerted upon us to recapture lost costs, just because this person is acknowledging that. So that's more what I would wanna look at. Is there any proportionality language that we don't pay more per whatever the unit of measurement is than other people are paying?
Right, that's good.
So not being the lawyer, I do believe that because we stress to them, it is already built into this agreement.
Okay.
Mr. Worst will ferret all that out into what section it is codified in. But we have diligently stressed to the county that we do not want to pay the same rate that another person would pay, because we're not paying for upkeep of their system for collection pipes, pumps, all that stuff. We have continually stressed to them that we collect the waste, we dump it into the interceptor, they convey it from the interceptor to the treatment plant, treat it. There is also some understanding and acceptance of the fact that they convey wastewater through our system, particularly from Coyote Ridge, so they are already using our pipes to transport waste from their system through our system to their interceptor. So most of this has been captured, but I will have Brian try to get it all out.
Perfect.
And make sure that it's all in there. And that's why first touch.
One last thing, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Do we have any, not liability, but any exposure? We don't have a stormwater capture system
No.
that in the future, the county come to us and say, hey, you have your own system. Why don't you do stormwater capture as well?
So
Does this
we
expose
do,
us?
so we do not have a combined sewer system like City of Spokane had. So all of our stormwater is routed to dry wells. Additionally, this contract excludes what is known as I&I, infiltration and, what's the other one? Infiltration and inception. Infiltration and inception, which is anything that is leakage into the pipes. They're not charging us a fee for that. They believe that because of the construction date of our system and the separation that we have, we deal with our stormwater, our street stormwater and other stormwaters by either direct spreading on the ground or through dry wells, swales, all that stuff, that they are not concerned with infiltration and inflow, sorry, not inception, inflow. So they're not worried about having other like quote unquote random pipes coming into the system that they cannot account for as part of the ERU analysis. So they're not saying it's ERUs plus 10% additional amount that we think is I&I, in other inflow and infiltration. So that is specifically out of the contract. That is something that, as Mr. Worst alluded to, they could always want, that's kind of why one of these things on the 15-year side of things is they could always say, oh, are you sure you guys don't have I&I? Did you ever do a study? It's not in the contract. So therefore, it ain't there and we're not, that is another reason why we are suggesting a longer period of time.
I like the longer period of time.
Any other questions on this? So Mr. Worst has his marching orders, we will do that, we will respond to your questions, make sure everything's vetted out, go home, read all this stuff. If we need more time, if we come back at the next meeting and we need more time to consider this or answer questions on that, I have let the county know that it is our intent to try and bring it before council for ratification at July, but if it is not ratified in July, there is the potential that it could slide. So this is something that there is time on. Mr. Sanders, sorry.
So we have three things here on item 8A. We've got the interlocal agreement.
You have the interlocal agreement,
Then we have the charge summary and the blended rate calculations.
which is this.
Yes, and those are not part of the agreement.
No, this is just for your information. And then you have the last, which is the blended rate calculation, which is this spreadsheet.
So I appreciate the look forward, but we're not committing ourselves to, we're not setting rates for the next
No,
couple of years at this point.
no,
I mean, next week, next month. But, you know, that's our information.
that is for your information.
Yeah, the interlocal agreement's a separate item.
Yes, the only thing that you are signing and the only thing we are acting on, or the only thing that would be executed would be the interlocal agreement itself, not the attached spreadsheets. There are no attachments to the interlocal agreement.
Good, thank you for the clarification.
Well, any other questions? So, thank you all. So you will see this again at the July, regular meeting. So that brings us to item, 8B, which is the interlocal agreement for law enforcement services with Spokane County Sheriff's Department. This is the interlocal agreement that was discussed last month by, Under Sheriff Kittle's staff, which provides for, at some point in the future, Millwood to have a 40-hour dedicated deputy, and also removes us from their current lead cap contract, which requires settle and adjust and all those things as we've gone through. And basically, locks us in, at a price per, full-time equivalent with a 3% escalator, in 25, 26, and 27. And, I believe right now, no, I just see in the agreement 27. I believe right now this is actually less than what we are currently paying for law enforcement services. So we actually would save money, and when the county reaches deputy capacity and we are able to work with them, we get our 40-hour-a-week officer. So this is for the first time. This has been vetted numerous times. Mr. Worst has reviewed this, other attorneys have reviewed it. I would just ask that council review this and please forward any questions you might have. And then, again, you will see this at the next council meeting. Mr. Shermans.
Quick question, would it make sense to do a 5-year contract? It appears to be favorable to the city.
We can ask. I can ask Sheriff Ritchie,
Same argument that we have for water.
Under Sheriff Ritchie.
We should ask, just because we won't have a deputy till early next year based on their cadet class.
I would think a 5-year contract.
So you would like to see a request for a 5-year contract?
And I would think that we'd like 2 additional 5-year options.
So 5 years plus 2 5-year options. I will ask.
I have one question.
Please.
So thank you very much. I think this has been needed and we've talked about it for so long. I appreciate your amazing work on this, Mayor. During the presentation, one thing was brought up that I did feel like they were telling us to agree upon before we sign the interlocal, and they said there is variability in Millwood regarding different hot spots of time, specifically like summer and spring was entirely different than fall and winter. And they said if you're hoping for the variability of time to just have those discussions before the interlocal, I'm actually fine with the interlocal as is, but I wanted to open it up so we're not later trying to feed something in that they very clearly told us to settle before.
Yes, I think one of the things what they would say is they probably don't want to build any sort of scheduling into this contract because as he alluded to, they have their own union requirements and those union contracts would change, can and often do change through contract negotiation. And that could potentially put them at odds with us. What this does is it does provide us the flexibility to set a schedule, but it, as we talked about, it can't be something where this week we want Tuesday through Friday, the next week we want Sunday through Thursday, something like that. We have to work within not only what they can provide, but what the union contract allows for and dictates for officer service, deputy service there. So there is some scheduling that we could have potentially for flexibility. Like if we think we want something where it's like, okay, 6 months out of the year we want this and 6 months out of the year we want that. That's something that I think they just would want to hear when they open the position.
Fair, and I agree with you. I wasn't suggesting we put it into the actual interlocal agreement, but it's my understanding this is our time to discuss and gather data around things, and that the next meeting, what we'll be doing is voting on will you proceed or not proceed, and then you would be the person that would carry that forward. And I don't want it to then just leave the train station without any direction if it was important to this group that we did look at seasonal variability.
I think because you have, as all of us have been receiving these Millwood reports, if there is something in here that you are seeing, and you can go back through and there's some really good summaries at the beginning and there's year-over-year summaries and things like that. I think what we would suggest, or what I have suggested to Under Sheriff Ritchie and Kittle staff is that we would like to once we are to the point where we would have that dedicated deputy, we would then want to work with them, where they say, yes, you have a dedicated deputy. We would then want to work with them based on their incident-based policing to say, we'd like you to set the deputy schedule from such and such a date to such and such a date, from such and such time to such and such time, to correspond with our overall heat map. And then if we find in a year or 6 months, we need to adjust that, we'd like the option of being able to do that. They seem to have that level of flexibility, but that's much more of something, it's hard to forecast now based on, they're not really sure what the deputy's gonna look like, what the job posting is gonna look like. I would say that what I can ask for is, but I'm not sure if they can even give that, if we could see what the internal posting looked like for like Medical Lake or Deer Park. But my guess is that it would look a lot more like Medical Lake, and it would probably, it's basically, they work 410s. So we would get 410s and we would set that schedule based on our incident-based policing.
Perfect. I mean, again, I thank you for the work. I'm very satisfied.
Well, we are extremely fortunate in this area that the sheriff and his undersheriffs and deputies have really worked hard to attract not only lateral transfers from other districts, but actually attract recruit classes that is bolstering and building back our law enforcement capabilities in this area. It's been a difficult time at Spokane County Sheriff's Office from a staffing aspect, and kudos to those officers for sticking with it, who did stick with it. It was, there was a lot of stretched nerves over there, a lot of stretched people. So are there any other questions? Mr. Sander?
I just noticed on page 23, section 12, they refer to the city of Millwood's city manager.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Minor item, but we don't have a city manager.
Probably came from Deer Park, some other jurisdiction.
Which one was that?
Section 12 on
Records.
page 23.
Okay, we'll put Councilman Sander there. Fixed.
We can take a look at that. We can scan that real quick. All right. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you very much. This will come back to you next month. So that brings us to our action items for consideration and motion. First is our consent agenda consisting of, and this has been amended, consisting of the May 14th, 2024 regular meeting minutes, the May 2024 treasurer's report, the May 2024 claims and payroll, the Grace Waterline change order number 2, and task order number 2403 for Argonne Public Outreach. Would any member of the council like to take any of those items separately this evening? Do I have a motion on the consent agenda as presented and amended?
I move approval of the consent agenda as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Because the task order number 2403 was introduced at this meeting, and that is kind of I think it needs to be impressed upon for us to move forward and start having those community dialogues. We need to move forward with this, and so that's why I felt comfortable with it being as part of the consent agenda.
Thank you. So appreciate those comments. Any other comments, discussion?
It's nice to get money back from a contract.
I know.
Then all in favor of the consent agenda?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, consent agenda is passed. Now, wait a minute. Did we get a second?
Yeah, Kelly.
Stravens, thank you. I might have missed that, didn't want none to blow that. All right. So now that brings us to item 9B, Resolution 2024-02, the 6-year Transportation Improvement Plan. Mr. Shiwi.
This document is exactly like it was last time you saw it at the first touch. There was one clerical error that I caught, which is just right up at the very heading below the title, 6-year street improvement plan. It said 2025 to 2029 scheduled projects, which is kind of contradictory to a 6-year plan. So we extended it out to 2031 to fulfill our full 6 years. Other than that, everything's identical. And if you have any other questions on it.
Any questions for Kyle on the 6-year tip? We've had the public hearing on the 6-year tip, and therefore at this time, is there a motion on resolution 2024-02 as presented?
Make a motion to approve the 6-year transportation improvement plan as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and
Make the amendment.
No, it's corrected in this, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
It's correct.
Okay,
It's
I'm
correct.
sorry. Yeah.
Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, our 6-year tip is approved. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 9C, ordinance 542, amending chapter 2.52 of the Millwood City Code, Millwood Municipal Code, beautification and tree board. Mr. Shiwi.
So I'm hoping you all had a few minutes to look at this before tonight's meeting. It's been kind of in the works since about the first of the year. It came to you guys once, we had some good public comments. Visited it at the tree board meeting, and actually the board brought up a couple good comments. Our main goal in this was we have to make our ordinance mirror our urban forestry management plan that you guys voted in. One of the main things that was kind of a hurdle was the urban forestry management plan is extremely strict on street trees and who can trim and prune them. We had a good informational meeting with Brian and Jim Flott, the guy that designed our plan. And the board was concerned with the financial burden of hiring a licensed arborist to take care of these street trees, you know, I mean, it can be a huge undertaking. And so they were trying to find this happy medium on, okay, well, what can we cut? What can we let the citizens cut that maybe they don't have to go out and spend thousands of dollars on? And where should those regulations be? And there was some banter back and forth on diameter and dead stuff and live stuff, and Jim was fairly well opposed, I would say, to most of it. But the board was pretty persistent, and I think we had settled on a 2-inch diameter, dead stuff in the tree you can take out. If it's a nuisance, if it's low hanging over a sidewalk or something to where it could hurt somebody or something, it can be removed by the homeowner. But anything other than that, we'd really like, it needs to be taken care of by a certified arborist. Jim did not like our 2-inch diameter rule at all. He wanted it stuck to an inch. Because I mean, you think of a 2-inch diameter, that's pretty good size. And that can do damage to the tree if it's cut improperly. But they decided that 2-inch was what they wanted, and so that's what we're going with. I think that was about all I had.
Yeah, I think, well, Kyle included me as part of that good meeting. I was just purely an observer. The consultant, Jim, did a great job. The tree board really vetted out a lot of issues. There was good public comment and participation, that's been incorporated in these revisions. On the issue that Jim, he disagreed with, it really just comes down to competing policies, you know. There are, as being a Tree City USA, as having a tree board, as having an urban forestry plan, there are certain expectations and obligations on the city. Those have to be balanced with what is gonna be reasonable for citizens and what, you know, what they can afford and what they can do. So that's where the tree board was coming down on that side. There's been some adjustment and some modification of the composition of the tree board. Recognizing that sometimes getting citizen volunteers on these boards can be difficult, but also trying to maintain that there's, you know, that there's a presence of citizens of the city on the board. So, the long and the short, Kyle presented it really well. I think it was, it's the first time I got to participate with the board. Pretty passionate group about what they're doing. It was a really good process, so, happy to answer any questions on the amendments to the city code, but, I would, just echo what Kyle said. It was good vetting by the board and the public in that process.
Questions? Mr. Strabens?
Kyle, I have a question. So in terms of, you know, I know we budget for it. What do you think, you know, we're going to do annual inspections, conditions, things like that. What do you think the annual expense to the city will be?
Well, I honestly think if we get this tree grant all done and all that work done on the public trees, I think it's going to be fairly minimal. And you're kind of forecasting into my public works speech a little bit here, but our latest new hire has an extreme knowledge of all this stuff and is inches away from having a certified arborist stuff. So I would really like him, he is going to pursue that and become the city's own certified arborist. Because clearly we can't be telling the public they can't cut stuff and then we're out here hacking on stuff without the proper certifications. So I think once we get this tree grant done and we have the professionals come in and take care of all of our trees, they've been neglected for so long that there's a lot of work to do. Once we get them caught up to speed, I think it's gonna be fairly minimal and something that we as the staff can probably, I would think, maintain moving forward.
My sense is, once, kind of like what you said, it's probably going to save us money in the future, long-term, if we maintain the trees, right?
Absolutely.
Because now it's been kind of happenstance, right? And so we have large expenditures, we have things like that. Does it save us anything in insurance to have this? Will it affect our insurance? Not really?
Doubt it.
Okay.
Yeah, I doubt it.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No other questions. So at this time, is there a motion on ordinance 542 as presented?
Make a motion to accept ordinance 542 as presented.
I second it.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, ordinance 542 is presented, is passed unanimously. Thank you. Did I call it 547? It's 542. If I called it 547, I apologize. Brain is mush. All right, so that brings us to item 9D. Argonne Full Depth Reclamation, Frederick to Trent. This is the Welch Comer Design Services Agreement. It is the Transportation Improvement Board Consultant Agreement. This, Kyle, you want to go through this, or this is just the standard agreement as was presented at the last meeting to provide engineering design services for the FDR for Argonne from Frederick to Trent, which is really Buckeye because they're not going to get into the concrete intersection. But that was not done in 2008, seven or eight, when we did the full depth reclamation from Frederick to the bridge. So we still have subgrade issues. We have the mega pothole that continues to sink in front of the daycare over there, and no matter how much patch you throw in there, it just goes away. So it will also, should address the constant sinking of the asphalt in front of the Argonne Trent concrete intersection pad, and it's basically it extends the life of that area on there. So, questions for Kyle over what this covers? Any other questions? Do I have a motion on the consultant agreement for the FDR from Frederick to Trent for Welchcomer Design Services?
I make a motion to approve the Welchcomer services, design service agreement for the Argonne full depth reclamation from Trent to Frederick.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Who wants it?
Kelly.
Mr. Straven, second. Is there any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, this is approved unanimously. Thank you very much. So that concludes our action items for this evening, and that moves to reports. So our first report is the Treasurer and Acting City Clerk report. Ms. Matkin, please.
Nice to see you.
Alive. A lot going on, so I'll try to keep it brief. The annual report was filed May 27th, on time and complete. I was kind of bummed because of the shingles. I was a day later than I normally have been for the last 5 or 6 years, so that's kind of a bummer. We're gearing up for budget season, so I'm looking for my people and to come back with you and to get some citizen involvement. So I'm all ready. Just tell me what to put in the bill. So, we've had some issues with our software. They did a big, huge overhaul of it. They hadn't done one for quite some time, and it's got some glitches, so.
What software?
Oh, I'm sorry, our accounting software of the spring. So they've come out with a new version, and there, a lot of us, well, I think all of us now are helping them work through the bugs, but then we're reverting back to the older version and we're going back and forth. But the bills, the commercial bills went out wrong. For some reason, and it stumped the programmer, when I ran the estimated water use for last winter to revamp their allotment, basically. It took everything back to 0, and then it charged them an irrigation month, May, at the whole rate. So these pretty big bills are there. So we've fixed that. They're gonna work on the system and see what went wrong, but we are having quite a bit of bumps and scrapes along the way, so I apologize to everyone. If you get something that looks weird, please call me because I am informing the software company of the problems, and then they're fixing the bugs. So a little patience during this time would be great. Please let me know. I'll see that it gets fixed. We're ready to just go back to 6. We don't like 7. It's too time consuming, but when we have to go backtrack. But please be aware that that's out there. If you get asked any questions, I didn't want you to go, you know, so I just wanted to let you guys know what was going on. In code enforcement, we've had a few issues. Not really as many as we normally do. So things are pretty quiet there. Usually it ramps up when people start doing stuff outside and, you know, maybe not picking up. It's more noticeable in the summer than it is in the winter. There was something else I was gonna talk to you guys about and it escapes me. Oh yeah, we've just been inundated with public records requests. I mean, it's taking up all of our time. So that's slowing us down as well. But I think, you know, slowly but surely we get a handle on everything. We're still working through bumps with new people upstairs and so be patient. Someday we'll all be trained and then I'll retire, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's all I have.
Any questions for Ms. Matkin?
I have a question. question in regards to the public records. This is something that's been going on in a lot of municipalities and counties. And some people are moving towards digitalization and then having some kind of automated system that is able to do a vast majority of the searching. Is that something we've explored?
I don't, the problem is, we digitized our records.
Yeah.
But the software does not work as anticipated, as sold. Not as sold. And it's ungodly slow. And it really dumped the records into just one big file that might be 300 pages long. So,
I would say regardless, we do have digital records that will help once we get the software issues rectified. Some things that are requested are things that we just have not digitized because we don't have that type of capability, so copies need to be made. And always, unless it is something that is specific to, that there is no potential for personal information or any strictures that are information that is regulated by the Public Records Act, those have to be reviewed. So there still is, it is extremely dangerous to grab records and just spit them out the door. So they always do have to be reviewed. So there is that element of timing and time that needs to go into making sure that what we are releasing follows the redaction guidelines that are required also by the state. So it's not always a speedy process. A lot of it just really depends on what the nature of the request. It also depends on how specific the request is. Some places are like, send me all your records from so-and-so to so-and-so. Well,
yeah, exactly right. Some are, and they're not specific enough for us to go, well, I don't even know what that is. You know, can you be more specific? So it's a long process. Yes.
And we are charging a reasonable amount, correct?
we charge what's allowed by state law.
Okay,
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Yes.
Good,
So you can't charge for time.
right.
Yeah.
It's price per page, correct?
Most of them want it electronically,
Oh,
so,
So it's
Yeah.
one less,
no.
So it's,
like 15 cents.
oh, but electronically, it's just your time. And,
It's all worker hours, yeah.
and is there a way to improve our software to decrease time? We need to update our software.
We're in the process of doing that, and that is gonna be a long process too.
but somebody still has to search for those records, still has to represent that the record search was thorough and complete as possible.
And responsive.
And responsive. Have we really looked for every responsive record? It's, yeah, I hesitate to say that, it would be good to have software that would just generate a report, because making sure that you have searched every possible place for every possible responsive record, and if you rely too much on the software, there are people who make their living doing this, and a nice one at that, making public records requests.
Yeah, they really do.
So thoroughness is what we strive for, and making sure that we provide truly responsive records. Any other questions?
So Debbie, on the software upgrade with accounting, there was no data loss, it's just implementation of the next version that is causing
Yes.
issues.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? All right, so that is our treasurer clerk report, and we move to facilities with Mr. Shiwi.
So it's back to the DNR grant on the trees. It's going at a snail's pace, which I'd like to really get going on, but we can't until we get all the paperwork and everything worked out with them. And so I've been working through their paperwork and details they want finished up before we can actually go solicit bids on that. the ball is in our court now, so I am patiently waiting for the next steps. I interviewed 2 gals that applied for the lifeguard position, and both have now got their CPR and first aid courses completed and are looking forward to starting as soon as school. One of them comes from CV district, and they are a couple days behind West Valley. I think her last day is the 17th. So once I figured out that we had personnel to man the pool, we started cleaning it. We made some minor repairs to the concrete, and we'll hopefully be painting it later this week or next with weather permitting. And the opening day for the pool is set for June 20th, which is a Thursday. Vertical Options came out and did their final installation on the elevator. I had flooring guys come out and redo the flooring on both levels. And we're now waiting for our final inspection date before they can put it fully into use. AAA came out to sweep the curb streets again after our most recent round of tree debris. And finally, our new hire in the park and our 4th guy that we were missing since our other one moved upstairs, Sam Bachman, he started a couple weeks ago. He's been working out very well. Like I touched before, he brings a vast knowledge of everything from sprinklers and grass to trees pruning and pesticides. He also, one thing I didn't say, he does have his pesticides license as well. And his personality seems to be a good fit with all of us here, and I'm excited to see where this takes us in the future. He comes from, I believe, has 9 years with West Valley Maintenance. And we did not steal him, he came to us. So if anybody's had hurt feelings, we're not the bad guy here. But no, he's done great so far and should be good. That's all I got.
Questions for Kyle? Thank you, Kyle. Mr. Erdahl, utilities report.
All the water samples came back good this month. Bigfoot finished up doing the electrical on the flow meter at Old Park, so that's up and running. They also installed the emergency shut-off button for the new park generator, so that got inspected and cleared. We topsoiled, sodded, and seeded part of the front yard at 8409 Liberty where we had that water main break. So we dug up part of their yard, so we got that looking good. Lilac sprinklers came out, tested all the backflow devices. And today I finished up the water use efficiency annual report and got that submitted to DOH. And the consumer confidence report, so that's now available on our website for people to see. And sent the certification to the Department of Health. And in sewer, everything's flowing.
Mr. Sander.
How did we do on our water use efficiency
We were up
percentage?
25 gallons per connection. So we're a little bit above our goal.
Any other questions?
When do you think we'll have the PFAS testing?
Probably this summer.
And it's Department of Ecology who does it?
The PFAS testing.
But here, it's the Department of Health requirement
Oh,
for
Department of Health.
the city to monitor, even though the Department of Health does have some reimbursement. There's a window of some grant money available for the test.
So before we jump in and start doing PFAS testing, we need to understand exactly how samples need to be collected, what are the analytical pitfalls, what are the sample collection pitfalls. And so we're gonna work on making sure that when we do go to take this first round, because you're looking at parts per trillion, parts per quadrillion, that we are fully sampling in compliance with the best methodologies, both for sample analysis and sample collection. So not gonna just run out and put some water in a bottle.
There's current methodology standards in order for the test to actually be validated that are higher and greater than most water sample requirements right now.
Will we take the test or will?
We take the test.
Oh, we take the test,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
So there's Department of Health's information, and of course, Analytical Labs, the one that does all the lab work here, so they've got some more information on that too, but it's pretty stringent.
Yes.
Parts
Yeah.
per
Yeah.
You know, don't wear any waterproof clothes, you know, and all this other,
Well, it's the cross-contamination of touching a to-go coffee cup or, breakfast sandwich wrapper or something like that have been invalidating, due to chain of custody processes. And, but as the mayor said, when you're testing 4 parts per trillion, I've heard somebody compare that to 4 raindrops in a football field. So, it's very,
At that level, your likelihood of cross-contamination without some sort of significant control on your transfer from source to bottle is, particularly for something as environmentally pervasive as PFAS, is off the charts. It's just, people thought dioxin and furan testing was bad. PFAS is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
So the generator's all done?
Yep.
Alright. So add.
Well, we'll keep welling. With no other questions, that brings us to, thank you, Matt. That brings us to the planning report. Ms. Tanya is not here this evening. She will be joining us at the administrative appeal hearing on Thursday, but her summary is included in your packets. She's continuing with the land capacity analysis. She has some permitting and license things coming up. She, you'll note on there, she is reviewing the Spokane County HAPT spreadsheet. The HAPT spreadsheet stands for Housing Affordability, Housing Accessibility Planning, Housing for All Planning Tool. Housing for All Planning Tool. We will be scheduling a special workshop meeting with the Planning Commission for the July meeting, where Amanda will come in and she will talk through the Housing for All, which is the new spreadsheet that's out. She'll talk through the missing middle housing legislation. She'll talk through some of the state developments and lot size requirements, and also brief the council and the planning commission on the new rules regarding accessory dwelling units and what is allowed now by state legislation. So that will be a new meeting, or a meeting coming up at the July 9th meeting, our next regular meeting. So she will be there. She will be setting that up. So that's that. Question?
There'll be a 6 p.m. meeting.
Gonna try and start at 5 because that thing could, if a joint meeting and the level of information she might have to plan, that might be a 90-minute special workshop presentation and then go into the regular meeting at 6:30. I need to coordinate with her on how much time she feels she needs to do to make an effective presentation and bring everybody up to speed on this.
I have 5 p.m. down.
Good.
I'll call you.
We'll see you there.
Yes, thank you.
So, if you do have any questions on anything going on, please feel free to reach out to Ms. Tanya. Legal report, Mr. Worst.
Good evening. 3 things to touch on. One, I will ask for council action on, which I guess I'll just start with that one. We, as Debbie mentioned, we've had some code enforcement issues. One is a notice and order that was served on the property located at 3215 North Argonne Road. There has been an RV that has been parked there recently. Again, it's been an issue that's been visited in the past with the property owner. The RV has moved on occasion and then has continued to reappear. There's been some interactions with an occupant in that RV. And citizens, neighbors that live in and around that area, folks felt unsafe around the occupant of the RV. So the notice and order to cease the residential use on a commercial property, as well as the RV use for residential use there. The notice and order went out on June 4th. I've not confirm that there's been compliance with it removed as of yesterday? It was still there?
It's still there.
It's still there. I'm gonna tell you the same story that I've told you on every code enforcement. The city is very patient and attempts to take a voluntary compliance effort every time until it's clear that voluntary compliance is not gonna happen. This is not the first, nor is this the second, nor is this the third instance with this particular property under the notice and order. With this particular circumstance, and there's been other code violations historically. I would like to, because we're here tonight, I would like to request the council approve authorization of litigation at the direction of the mayor regarding a failure to follow or failure to address a code enforcement violation and notice and order for the business Argonne Cycle located at 3215 North Argonne Road. We will try to refrain from litigation if at all possible, but I'm afraid that that's probably where it's gonna end up at this point.
I will just say that this round of citizen complaints have been different than previous opportunities. We actually had both of the property owners, not just the tenants of those businesses, but the property owners complaining at this point. There have been some law enforcement issues with respect to that. However, that doesn't pertain to the code enforcement. It's also important to understand that the parking of the vehicle is not what is at question. That is private property. We have made it clear to not only to surrounding tenants, residents, property owners, that the owner of Argonne Cycle has a right to have that vehicle parked there. The issue is that it has been represented, it has been repeatedly represented, it has been confirmed, it is shuffled around that there is an individual living in that RV. And unlike our residential rules regarding living in RVs, it is very clear in our code that there is no living in RVs allowed in our commercial zones in C1 or C2. So the city has repeatedly engaged with this property owner to rectify this situation. Situation is rectified, and then the situation comes back. We've had a few instances where we believe that representations have been made to the city that are just patently false. And so, as much as as said, we try to be patient with things like this. This is a frequent occurrence, and the type and nature of complaint is from the surrounding owners or from the surrounding occupants is increasing, and we are complaint driven. We are citizens. We are complaint driven. We don't go around looking for this. As I said, there's nothing wrong with having the RV parked there. But when we are documenting, it's documented to us that we have an individual living in there.
Power cords running to it have been observed and photographed.
Power cords, the individual leaving at times that are not consistent with arriving to work at the business. There's some other issues that apparently there has been dumping of an RV cartridge, wastewater RV cartridge in a sewer clean out. That would indicate that somebody is living in that RV. So we have a pretty fair amount of documentation on that. So yes, to Mr. Worth's request to ask the council to authorize the city to pursue litigation if necessary. We're hoping that we've had interaction with the person. We're hoping that this corrects. And we've given them leeway to attempt to correct this. But if not, we have to do something.
I'll make a motion to authorize the mayor to commence litigation if needed in the case of code enforcement at 3215 North Argonne.
Is there a second?
Second.
I got it this time.
You take it.
You guys. Moved and seconded, any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? So we will say that, that is unanimous to allow, commencement of litigation for code enforcement.
Thank you. Restraint will be the key, and that's what we'll try to do, so. Second item is, council recently approved the, CR2A, mediation agreement, with Inland Empire Paper. We're still working through the necessary, once the parties got on the same page, now we have to appease WASDOT with the documentation, of course. So we're still working through the documentation on that. Hopefully we can get that, squared away, so. Third and final is, as was mentioned earlier, there's a closed record appeal public hearing scheduled on Thursday night. What time? Six o'clock.
6 o'clock.
And that's, I just wanna be mindful that you understand the nature of a closed record appeal. The record has been developed at the administrative level. It's been provided to each of you for review. It's been made public. The record was developed at that process, so to the extent that there are, if there's desire to accept comments, testimony, things like that, it's an appeal. It's an argument-based presentation. We've set out in the notice the kind of the process for it. There's only one appeal in this case, whereas in a similar appeal in the past, there was multiple. But please be mindful of the appearance of fairness rules. Kelly's shaking a nod in his head. I think he could probably recite to you the appearance of fairness and conflict statement that that was recited at every planning commission meeting and hearing that was held before. To the extent that you receive comments via email at the grocery store, anything like that, we will ask that you present those on the record at the beginning of the hearing, because we have to under the appearance of fairness. This is a quasi-judicial hearing. To the extent anybody has a conflict of interest, we're gonna ask you to present that and put it on the record as well, because it's a quasi-judicial hearing. Just be mindful that, the record is the written documents that are presented to you on that. So, why you get to serve as the quasi-judicial body on this one. It comes with the good and it comes with the bad of the process. So happy to answer any questions for you on that. Just again, wanted to be mindful. I think there has been some emails or communications made to folks, and I understand that. That's part of being both a citizen in your city and an elected official in your city. We just need to make sure that we follow the appearance of fairness doctrine that is laid out in Washington.
Any questions for Brian on any of those other two items? Thank you, Mr. Wertz.
I have a
Anything?
question.
Oh,
Mr. Wertz, so I did receive some emails, but I believe they're contained.
I think the city probably received the same thing, and that's why we set those out for you, just to make sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I think they're contained.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Thank you.
any other questions? Thank you. So mayor's report, I'll be brief. The biggest thing that I covered it already in planning is that we will be setting a joint planning commission, city council meeting to discuss all of the legislative changes for housing density, et cetera, what's been done, what is more than likely to occur. That will be scheduled for July 9th. Gonna start at 5 p.m., not really sure on the duration of that. Working through these contracts, and we'll take any of this back, and then working to make sure that we had the documents or the presentation for the traffic calming. At the special meeting, heard those comments, and we will, city staff and engineer will work forward to come up with some ideas. Just come up with a plan and some ideas of where we could potentially and what we could potentially implement. Obviously, the low-hanging fruit on this would be Empire, because that's where we have the best record, and we would start there. What I would say is that given that July is gonna be busy, I have, talked to Welchcomer and said that, we would look for this sort of thing coming back to council as a discussion on next steps for implementing or discussing some of these measures in August. So that will come back to you not next month, but the following month. Any questions for me on anything that's going on here? All right, well, thank you very much. So that brings us to council information, concludes reports, brings us to council information. You have your sheriff's report for April 2024, and that is in your packets. And so that brings us to our public remarks. As always, the opportunity for citizens to address the council either in person or by submitting their remarks. We ask that in-person speakers limit themselves to 2 minutes and follow the participation guidelines available at City Hall. We have received written comments or written remarks that we are treating as remarks. We received a remark from LaDonna Dement. We believe that this is more germane to the administrative hearing, but it is included. We received 2 public remarks from Doug Sadler. Both of those are germane to the administrative appeal hearing. We received a written comment from Tina Seifert. That is with potential to be as part of the traffic calming, so that is there for your review. There is a little bit about the potential for the appeal, but it mostly pertains to traffic calming on Empire. And then we did receive a written remark from the Millwood Neighborhood Advocates signed by a number of individuals remarking on the Argonne project. Those remarks are there for your review, but just to note that we did receive remarks that were toward the administrative appeal hearing. So that is all the written remarks. So we have on our sign-in sheet, we have Mr. Todd Beasy. Mr. Beasy.
Todd Beasy, 8610 East South Riverway. And a lot of exciting things have been going on in Millwood, in the streets, the buildings, and the alley between Argonne, behind the business district there. One thing that was exciting, a couple of weeks ago, motorcycle law enforcement were in town giving out speeding tickets. And I haven't heard from anybody that they were handing out red light, going through red lights, but speeding. And everybody who saw this, and I was around visiting with, were very happy to see them. Whoever was responsible for that, anybody up here at the big table, thank you very much. There were a number of law enforcement on motorcycles. It was cool to see. No Friday nights at the Masonic Lodge through the summer. They'll start up again in the fall. Stockwell's, Wednesday evening, they still have the dancing. Friday, live music. And Saturday, karaoke. Try to get out to the historic area there and see what's going on. West Valley High School. I'll be wearing this tonight when I go to the basketball games. West Valley High School has Tuesday and Thursday night basketball games. Now, the exciting thing about this is that it's called the Millwood Girls Varsity League. And there are 23 different schools from around the area that are in this Millwood Girls Varsity League. And tonight, our West Valley girls are going to play Colville, and they have 2 games tonight, Colville and Freeman. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So that was our one listed. Do we have any person who would like to provide public remarks? Second call, third and final call. Seeing no one, we will close the public remarks period. Thank you very much. That brings us to our council remarks this evening. We'll start with Ms. Beasy. Ms. Beasy.
I'll try to keep it brief because I know we've gone long. But one of the big antecedents for why I even wanted to become part of the city council was I believe a resilient community always considers neighborhood food production. And I've met a lot of sojourners along the way, Teresa and Doug, many people. And in the last 18 months, we have been, a group of us within Millwood Impact have been kind of visioning what that might look like in the future. And we held a big meeting last month that hopefully you'll be hearing more about. And it turns out that both Brandon and Shireen, on behalf of Millwood Impact, were covered in the current this week. So congratulations to them. I will also be working with staff to get us on the actual agenda for a presentation in October, hopefully to talk about some of the things that's going on. But just quickly, as you guys all may know, if you've lived around me, I'm a big fan of gardening and, neighborhood agriculture, including chickens, and so much so enthusiastically 8 years ago, I was probably talked about at one of these meetings for code enforcement. I've reeled it back. But even if all 2,000 of us across all 700 households became enthusiastic gardeners and chicken owners and all these different things about food production, we still would never be able to take a big stab at that resilience because we lack the acreage for grain production. That is something that different constituents of this Millwood Impact Initiative have actually been talking about. How could we potentially take a real stab at growing our own food? And so hopefully you'll be hearing more about that. Shireen, of course, is at the center as our chair, so you can always ask her, but a lot of exciting things going on.
Thank you very much. Mr. Culler?
No comments, I still have my chickens, so doing my part.
Mr. Van Hees?
I don't have anything tonight.
Mr. Sander?
We can't beat, what we just heard, so.
I got rid of my turkey when I heard I couldn't have a turkey.
And when I got code enforced, I got rid of mine as well.
We might have a turkey center right there. Thanks for the work on the tree board. Thanks, staff. Sounds like it's been busy, so thanks.
So, with that, do we have any announcements? No announcements, and with that, I will set the next meeting. We have the special meeting for the administrative hearing, the administrative appeal hearing set for Thursday, June the 13th at 6 p.m. And then we have our next regular meeting, July 9th at the regular meeting. I'm going to say right now is set for 6, but maybe set for 6:30 as we get closer. There will be a special meeting consisting of a workshop between the Planning Commission and the City Council beginning at 5. And with that, that is all of our announcements, setting meetings, and so is there a motion for adjournment?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned.
We gonna do this every meeting?
Yeah.